Welcome back to Cody Builds. If you missed last week's episode, you missed us recovering this truck from the barn where it had been parked since 1998. We got this truck out of the shed, stripped it down to the bare chassis, and we've got it back here in my shop where we're going to start the build process. Now, we haven't talked much about the build process, and you might have picked up on a few clues in the last video, but today we're going to talk about the exact plans we have for this truck, and we're going to get started on the build by modifying the chassis. So let's talk about it. This truck is in rough shape. There's not much rust on the frame, but the body's in rough condition, everything else. And this truck is special to me. It was my grandfather's work truck. I don't really want to do a restoration on this truck. I want this truck to look like my grandfather's work truck. So what does that mean? I'm not going to worry about the dents and the dings and the scratches and even some of the rust that's in this truck. But what we are going to do is remove and patch any rust in the cab that could allow exhaust fumes or anything like that in it. So anything that's structural, we're going to repair. Anything that's cosmetic, we're probably going to leave. I want this truck to kind of be a time capsule. And once we go down the path of the restoration, that's all gone and that history is erased. So, you know, that's kind of how I envision the look of this truck. But what about the chassis and the driveline? I want this truck to be a fun truck. I want it to be a truck we can drive 1,000 miles, maybe on power tour. I want it to be something, if I want to go and autocross, then we can do that. It's got an 8-foot bed on it. It's a long bed. We are going to narrow the chassis to make this a short bed. We're going to get rid of all the leaf spring and twin I-beam suspension up front, and we're going to be going with the QA1 coilover conversion kit for this truck. That's going to give it a nice plush ride, tunability for autocross or anything that we want to do with this truck. We're going to keep the original 9-inch rear end in this, but we're going to do a complete rebuild on that. As far as the engine, I don't believe the engine is original for this truck. I don't have any ill feelings about not repairing that engine or getting it back up to par. The reason this truck was parked in the first place was it had a lot of top end noise. There was something going on in the valve train, and my dad just parked the truck and let it sit for 26 years. I did the math. You know, we could tear that engine down. We could rebuild it, try and get some performance out of it. I believe it was a Ford 360 engine. But the cost and the time involved in that is almost negligible when you consider a place like Blueprint Engines, who we can get a stroked 408 that puts out almost 500 horsepower, and it's only slightly more expensive, and it comes with a warranty. So for this particular project, we're going to have a Blueprint Engines 408 stroker motor, TKX manual transmission, and the Ford 9-inch rear end for the drivetrain. Everything underneath the body is going to be completely refinished. So we are going to sand this frame down, have it repainted, do all the chassis mods first, obviously. All new wheels and tires, everything's going to be brand new underneath the body, and then we're going to put that old body right on top of it. So we're going to have, you know, kind of a ratty little hot rod. That's the plan. So I hope you'll stick with me. Today, we're going to start the process by cutting down this frame. We're going to take 16 inches out of the middle of this chassis. That's the length that is needed to make this from a long bed to a short bed. I'm going to take you through the process, and I'm going to tell you how I'm going to shorten this frame. I'm not saying it's the right way. I'm not an expert. I've done a lot of research, and I'm doing what I feel comfortable with. So let's get started. Okay, so I had some rebar lying around, so that's what I'm going to use. I cut two 48-inch pieces. I cut both of them down to 24 inches. And what we're going to do here, these are going to be the supports that are going to catch the frame. I'm going to figure out about where I want it here on the frame, and we're just going to tack this rebar. We're going to put it down to the ground so it's tight, tack it right to the frame. That's going to be leg one. We're going to repeat that process on the other side of the frame and then in the back. Without any of the bed or anything else on this truck, most of the weight is behind the axle, and there's actually more frame behind the axle than there is in front of it. So for the front half, we're going to brace at the back here, and then for the back half, we're going to do the same thing, because once we cut this frame's going to want to tip up and not down. So by having legs in the back, that's going to catch the frame back there. It should keep all the tension off our cutting blade when we're cutting. and keep us safe. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my grinder. We're going to clean a spot here. We're going to clean a spot for a ground so we have a good ground while we're welding. And then we're just going to tack this thing in place. All right, so what I've done is I've cleaned up the frame. I've got all four of my legs mounted in. You can see here. What I'm using is just a old flap disc, a well worn out old flap disc on this. I didn't want to go too nuts with a grinder. I'm not trying to take a bunch of material off the frame. All I'm trying to do is just knock some of that surface rust off to give myself a clean surface to mark out what we're going to actually be cutting. So I use an old flap disc, cleaned up both sides of the frame. I've got our braces in here. I'll show you around back. We've got braces in. See, this is a drop bracket for a hitch. This is all going to get cut out. So I just cleaned this up. We've got braces welded on there so that when the frame drops, it'll act as a stop and keep this from flipping up on the back side. Same thing over here, and you'll see I've got this all cleaned up as well. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to lay out and mark the frame to cut. Now, I should say I did not come up with this method. I researched this, found in a few forums where people had done this style of cut. So the measurements and the things I'm going to use are what I researched online and I know will work. So take that with a grain of salt. Again, I'm not saying this is the best way to do this. It's just the way, after all the research that I did, this is how I felt it was best to go about this process. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to lay out a template. We're going to make a template out of wood so that we get nice straight lines. That template has to be 4 5/8 of an inch wide. So we're going to rip down a piece of wood here. I've got a little piece of scrap wood just left over from doing trim in my house. We're going to rip that down to 4 5/8 inch wide, and then I'll show you how I'm going to lay this out on the frame. Okay, so I've got my template cut here. We're actually going to mark out the frame for good here for what we're going to cut. So again, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to mark 1 inch behind the bed mount here. That's where I'm going to make this first cut. So I'm going to mark that 1 inch. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to mark 16 so I know where my back cut's going to be. And I'm actually going to mark one back at 18 inches. And the reason that I'm doing that, you know what, I just screwed up. So this is important, why it's important to think about this. I marked a mark back 1 inch. And then I came to my mark here and marked it 16 inches. If I had made those cut, that's 15 inches, not the 16 that I want to take. So I need to add the 16 to the 1. And by my math, that's 17. So I'm going to mark 1 at 17, X these marks so I don't get confused. And then what I was going to say is I'm going to actually mark one back 2 inches from there. Okay, so this is 2 inches back from our cut line. The reason I'm doing that is I'm going to have a spot now that I can index off of the front bed mount that's not in our weld path. So when this is all back together, I have a reference point here where I know I'm 1 inch, my weld is 1 inch back, but so that's 1, and then I'm 2 inches back from where these frames should meet, 2 sections of frame should meet. That puts me at 3 inches back from the bed mount. So I know when I'm trying to square this back up, I'll know that I have a mark here that should be 3 inches back from the front of the bed mount. So I'm going to go ahead and mark these across. All right, so I've got my marks transitioned down the frame, and then I'm going to double check on my straight edge here that I've got 16 inches down here as well, just to make sure we've got a nice, yep, and that's 16 inches, so that's perfect. Okay, what we're going to do is get our template out here, and I'm going to grab a couple clamps. Okay, and the way we're going to mark this, we're going to put the top edge of this at our cut line. So sorry, the bottom edge of this template at the cut line and the top edge down here at the cut line. And what that's going to give us is this section of about 4 5/8 that will be removed. So if you can imagine doing a butt weld, you're going to take this full 16 inches out, and that's gone. And then you're going to join the frames. With this lapping method, we're taking this section out. As we bring the frame forward, now we're going to have all this triangle in here that previously would have been cut out doing a butt weld method. This is now available to overlap the frame and double the frame up. So that's the reason we're doing this. It's going to add strength and rigidity over this section where we're modifying the frame. So I'm going to clamp this in place, get this marked on both sides, and I'll bring you in for a close-up so you can see exactly what this looks like once we've got it all marked out. Okay, I've got this first side marked out, and I'm hoping this makes a little more sense now. It's a little hard to see the marks on the camera, but you can see where I've put the X's in. So here's our front of the frame line, the vertical line there. That's the 1 inches behind the bed mount. And then back here is our 16-inch cut line. Those would be the marks you'd cut if you were doing that butt weld fitment as we were talking about. You can see where I put the X's in the frame there. That's actually the piece that's going to come out. So hopefully that makes a little more sense now. You can see on the top side I marked it the same. So what we end up with is, instead of all of this being gone, this will stay. This section comes out all down through here, cut the bottom side, and then we're going to lap these frames. So that's what it's going to look like. I'm going to get the other side marked up. We're going to get to cutting, and then we'll start trying to fit this back together.
Perfect.
We got the frame split in two here. And if you were watching during that time lapse, you saw that our braces that we made up here worked perfectly to plan. I've got to let some batteries charge up here so I can, I'm going to clean these faces up, get these cleaned up and ready to weld. And then we can try and roll this thing into place. Now, I do have to also notch the top rail here so we can actually slide this piece over the outside and through there. Once we have that done and I get the top indexed where it's supposed to be so that we're at our 16 inches, what I'm going to do is we'll have some amount of overlap here. I'm going to drill a hole near the top edge and one near the bottom edge, and we're going to bolt these rails together. We're going to take all the gap out of them, bolt them together. That'll allow us to tack everything into place without actually heating the frame and bending things into shape. So I think this is going to be the stronger way to go. It's going to have a good amount of overlap. We're going to be splitting that seam with two welds, one on the inside, one on the outside. The bottom rails and the bottom and top rails will be overlapped and doubled. I made my first attempt here. The front of the notches are still a little too tight, so I'm going to go ahead and open those up with the angle grinder, and hopefully that'll make it a little bit easier to slide together. We were short just like 1.5 inches. So if I can slot the front open a little bit more, make it a little bit easier on myself here, I think the two halves will slide right together. I think I need to cut off my braces here, because I think what's happening is I can't actually lower. We're going to change the angle that this frame sits at a little bit because we're shortening it, and I need to actually move the center down, and I can't right now because of the rebar legs. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those off and see if that gets me where I need to go. Yeah, it's just a little too tight right here on the underside of the frame, where those welds, where the top of the notch is, and this side of the frame. Not by much. We're so close. We're actually all the way in on that side, which is great. I just need to take such a small amount more out of the front, and we'll be there. The problem is I just cut off my legs, so if I try and move this, we're going to knock the frame loose, I think I'm just going to buzz these back in now at the shorter length. And that'll help me get things lined back up anyways. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to weld the legs back in real quick. Just tack them in nice and light. Same deal. Third time's a charm, I think. I took this back apart. Well, first thing I did is I retacked on my legs here at a shorter height. That way they allowed me the flexibility to work the frames back and forth together. And then I came in and I cleaned up this notch a little bit on the front side. I think we were just catching there. So I've got the ratchet straps back together. I've got the frames indexed into one another, and I'm going to try and pull them together. I know this side will go. If we can get this side to go, we'll be right where we need to be. And then it's down to squaring the frame up, tacking it in place. Well, we'll have to pinch the rails together with bolts, tacking everything up, and getting it all welded together. So let's see if we can get there. There it is, right there, on the money. All right, frame 16-inch shorter. That's great. Okay, I'm going to take a few measurements here. Now remember, I marked a hole 2 inches back from the 16-inch line. So it should be 3 inches from the back of the front bed hole to that index line. And I'm going to just grab a pair of vice grips here and clamp this down tight about where it'll be. Okay, and I'm going to take a quick measurement. Oh, on the money, exactly 3 inches. This side's perfect. So I know we've got the full 16 inches out of this frame. And I might even be overshot on this side. I am. So actually this side needs to go back a touch. But that means we've got the distance. We can get this frame where it needs to be. So I'm going to bring you in close, show you what we're working with here. Okay, so as you can see, for one, we're not aligned side to side. So I'm going to show you, this is exactly what we were talking about. So you see, this side's almost an inch apart. You get almost an inch of gap here due to that taper that we took out of the frame. Cutting in the middle of that taper. Same thing on this side. We don't quite have as much here, so the one thing I'm going to have to do the next time we come in here is I'm going to have to even the frame side to side, and then we're going to square the frame. So I'm going to call it a night for tonight, and we have officially shortened this truck 16 inches. Man, it looks good. I'm telling you, 16 inches is a lot to take out. I was actually having to step pretty close in between the back bumper and this desk here before, and now I've got all kinds of room for activities. So thanks for tuning in. I appreciate everybody that watches. You know, we're just here having fun. We're in the garage playing, building. I hope you're learning something from me. I'd love to hear from you. What are you working on? What projects do you guys have going on? What would you like to see on this channel in the future? You know, this project is going to eat up a lot of our time over the next year. We're going to spend most of our time building this truck. So, you know, I'm going to pepper in some other little projects here and there when I can, but the bulk of this channel is going to be focused on this truck and getting it back on the road. So, big milestone today. Subscribe. Please subscribe if you like what I'm doing. I'll catch you on the next episode.